Welcome to Stoughton Spotlight. I'm your host, Jeffrey Pickette. On this episode, we feature Stoughton's Pat Walsh, who's part of the cast for Season 19 of The Ultimate Fighter, a reality show which airs on Fox Sports 1. A champion high school wrestler while at Stoughton High, Walsh transitioned to mixed martial arts and has experienced success both as an amateur and now as a pro. He is also an assistant wrestling coach at Stoughton High and just acquired Big East Gym in Stoughton. The Ultimate Fighter Season 19 debuts April 16th on Fox Sports 1. While he has to be tight-lipped about how he does on the show, perhaps this will be the springboard to stardom for the 25-year-old Walsh. We sit down with Walsh to talk about The Ultimate Fighter, his wrestling background, his coaching career, and his career aspirations. So I'm joined in studio by Pat Walsh. Pat, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll get into your background and your career, but we'll just start with the big news of you being on The Ultimate Fighter Season 19 on Fox Sports 1. And just briefly, again, we'll get back to it in more detail, but how did you get into this whole process, get on the show? How did you come about becoming potentially a reality television star?
Well, I was living in Providence, Rhode Island at the time. I had a sales job. I recently got an apartment, put down a security, everything like that, and I heard about The Ultimate Fighter just through the fight scene. And the tryouts were hosted in Indianapolis, and I just, on a whim, I bought a one-way ticket. That's all I could afford. I couldn't afford the two-way. I had a check that was getting deposited Friday, and I think I bought the ticket on a Tuesday. I flew out that Thursday. I actually slept outside the hotel because I just didn't have the money to pay a flight, hotel, and be able to feed myself. So I slept outside and tried out at 7 in the morning, and it took all day for the first wave of the tryouts, but I did well enough for them to invite me back to some more interviews. They flew me back out to Vegas, and the rest just kind of fell in line. They ended up choosing me and casting me.
And this we'll hopefully be able to follow your progression through the show, which will start, you were saying it's going to start in April?
Correct.
And to kind of backtrack now we'll get back to the reality television aspect, but you started as a champion wrestler at Stoughton High School, and so it's kind of what got you into the sport?
Geez, my brother wrestled for Stoughton High. He was someone I always looked up to. He ended up being a captain of Stoughton, and when I was in 8th grade, my brother had been wrestling. I think he was a sophomore, and I was walking up from the middle school to the high school. And at that time, it was Coach Colantonio's first season coaching, and I think they didn't realize that I wasn't supposed to be joining practices, but I was kind of stepping in, joining the workouts, and halfway through the year, they kind of had a conversation with me. Hey, you're an 8th grader, you're not supposed to be here, but I was there every day. I kept showing up, and eventually just kind of let me in the room. After that, starting my freshman year, luckily enough, I was able to be fit into the roster, and I am doing pretty well. I ended up being a state champion as well as a New England champion, which I believe I'm the only New England champion out of Stoughton High, and now I actually coach.
And what about wrestling was just something that you said your brother wrestled, but what about the sport and now mixed martial arts? What about that fighting aspect? What just kind of appeals to you about the sport?
I am just so obsessed with the idea that everything's on me. I played football, I ran and threw for track, but I would have a good game in football, and not that I was a football star or anything, but we could still lose if I did well. Now in wrestling, you can still lose as a team. Your team could not win any games, but in wrestling, you can lose a dual meet, but your individual record still matters. People still see you out there, and just the idea of having complete control over a situation really appealed to me. And I just loved it. It was so competitive, and I was able to kind of show my technique. Everyone's eyes were on me when I was out there competing, and that's something that was definitely special and just really got me to keep going and keep improving.
And you continued wrestling in college. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Geez. So after winning a New England championship at Stoughton, I was still kind of new to the sport. I didn't realize I wanted to go to college until probably sophomore year. My grades were okay; they were pretty good, especially junior and senior year. Just about, I was on the honor roll. But I wanted more options. I didn't feel like I really developed, even though I was good. I wasn't really recruited as much as I wanted. And a prep school by the name of Wyoming Seminary really recruited me, and they ended up giving me a very large scholarship to go and do a post-grad year. So I actually had a transitional year, post-grad year, between high school and college. And at Wyoming Seminary, which they were national champions this year for the first time, beating Blair Academy, which never happens. Blair Academy have been national prep champs since the 80s every year. So Wyoming Seminary was the first time they had lost since the 80s. But I was the first, me and the 215-pounder were the first two national champions for Wyoming Seminary in over 50 years. So going to Wyoming Seminary, I really grew as an athlete and as a student athlete. And then I got recruited by Ohio State and was offered a scholarship and ended up going there to wrestle.
And the transition between wrestling and mixed martial arts, how closely related are the two sports? Just kind of describe some of the differences, similarities between them, and how you ended up making the transition.
Well, with wrestling, obviously it's a more grappling sport. You're worried about takedowns, getting out, escapes. It's a point system. When I wrestled, there was sometimes when I felt like I was more physically aggressive. There's a couple guys that were a little bit more slick than me. They might be able to score on a takedown, kind of run away from me and just out-slick me. And that used to frustrate me. And the idea of even a more raw sport. I mean, wrestling, it's one of the oldest sports known to man. But before wrestling, just naturally, people fighting, people going after each other, less rules, less about a point system. And that's something that definitely appealed to me. And the difference between wrestling and fighting is that you get to use everything. It's a little bit more dynamic. And wrestling is something, it's very similar in the fact that the faster, aggressive, more athletic person usually wins. But in MMA, I was able to go out and, if I could physically beat someone up, I would always win. In wrestling, even if I was physically dominating someone, they might be able to, outscore me, outpoint me. But with MMA, the difference is you can throw strikes, you can elbow, you can kick, you can punch, and you have submissions. So it could be a situation where someone isn't using a strategy and really just scoring points. It leaves a little bit more open to kind of that raw competitiveness that really attracted me to wrestling in the first place.
Now, with MMA, how often will you fight? I know that in boxing, for example, you might only have a couple bouts a year. It takes a long time to train, and then it takes a long time to kind of recover from those fights. How often are you fighting?
Well, with my amateur career, I had just about 10 fights in a year, which is way more than the average person. Usually you have about 2, 3 to 4 fights in a year, especially people that compete in the UFC. Usually you only get 3 or 4 fights a year at most, because you have to have that full 8-week training camp. You have to be, at the high, you're competing at the highest level, so you need to be able to compete at the highest level. So I was able to do it a little faster. I had a wrestling background. I actually, I kind of handled my own fight career, and I picked up every fight I could. I was taking fights on short notice, especially in my amateur career. Same thing with my professional career. I would fight anyone, and it didn't really matter. I don't think I've ever turned down a fight. So for myself, I'm able to fight a little bit more. Now, obviously, I'm using this as a career, and it obviously has a larger incentive financially, so I should be a little bit smarter about how I choose my fights. But yeah, you can fight. You can fight 3 or 4 times a year, but also with professional athletics, you need the correct training camp, and it has to the stars usually have to align. You have to prepare for a certain opponent. So now I think my fights will be a little bit more spread out.
Well, you touched upon finances a little, just the financial end, and you told us at the beginning of the interview about the story of you going to Indianapolis with the one-way ticket, especially as an amateur fighter, you're not getting paid, great sums of money, or if anything at all. How do you balance having, I know you have a job, you own a gym, how do you balance all of the other aspects of your day-to-day life with training?
Well, balancing, I mean, even finances. My big expenses is usually gas. I have a Jeep Wrangler, and I'm driving to different training sessions. I'm usually in Boston, Somerville. I train a lot on the South Shore. I'm driving all the time, and usually it's to multiple practices. So that's a little demanding on my pocket, but I'm able to organize my life pretty well. I don't have much free time. I'm a very busy person, but I'm able to run a business. I'm able to have a sales position. Be able to run my gym. I'm able to train, and also I have time to coach wrestling. And it may suffer on my personal life. It's not great for relationships, but these are things that I want. I want to be successful, so I'll do whatever it takes to kind of make it.
You mentioned a little bit of what you do. You are part owner of a gym, another local gym in West Bridgewater, but you just acquired Big East in Stoughton, which is at Lindelof Ave. Tell me a little bit about that.
Correct. I fell in a situation where I was able to acquire a gym without a huge financial investment. A lot of it's just kind of my sweat equity going there. I've been renovating. My hands are still covered in paint. But yeah, I acquired Big East, and I'm going to be working there, and I have a lot of people, a big support group, and especially with the show coming out and some new publicity, I think I'm going to do very well in that business aspect.
And coaching is one aspect of what you do that you seem to be very passionate about. You also coach, assistant coach with Mike Carroll at the Stoughton High wrestling team, or for the Stoughton High wrestling team. Talk to me a little bit about coaching and what goes into it, how you kind of use your experiences. As you're coaching high schoolers, you're not that far removed as a 2007 graduate from Stoughton High from going through the same thing that these kids are going through now. So how does that kind of help you in your coaching process?
It definitely helps to be able to connect with the kids. Again, I'm not that much older than them, so we're able to really connect on an emotional level, and I feel like they can talk to me a little more. They can joke around a little bit more closer to their age. Coach Carroll is doing such a good job with the program. I'm just glad I'm a part of it. But since I've already been there, I've already gone through Stoughton High. I've already been to the States, been to the New Englands, and obviously have done well. I feel like I'm able to guide these kids. I've been there. This is what I did to get there. Let's get a game plan to make sure you guys can be also successful.
And one of those wrestlers that you work closely with, Frankie Jarrell, wrestles at the 220-pound class. He recently came in second in the All-State tournament, and then prior to that, he was the Division II champion for the whole state and the Hockomock League champion. Talk to me a little bit about coaching him, and he's the first champion, you were telling me, since you won. Yeah. Back in high school. He's going to the New England tournament just like you did.
Yep, it's a beautiful thing. Again, it was the same weight class that I wrestled, and just having another wrestler come through and watching him grow and develop as an athlete was really something special. And he's just, we got blessed. Frankie came to Stoughton High, and he already had that kind of aggressiveness, the competitiveness. That was something we didn't have to teach him. And he was just the right athlete for the spot. Him going through and winning a Division II state championship was something that he exceeded all the expectations. I mean Frankie, I think he's 5'5". He's going against guys that look much more physically appealing than he is. And he went through and he just out-toughed these kids. He outworked them. And again, Coach Carroll did a great job with the whole team in general, and I think I kind of...
Yeah, it's been a very successful season.
Yeah, we had a great season. I think it's one of the best seasons since I can remember in Stoughton High, much better than when I wrestled. But I definitely focused a little bit more on Frankie, and being around the same weight as him, being able to wrestle with him, I think was something that definitely helped winning a state championship.
You mentioned weight. That's something that wrestlers always seem to have to keep a very close eye on. Mm-hmm. Now, you wrestled at high school at the heavyweight class. Where are you right now in terms of fighting for MMA?
Right now, my walking weight is about 225. I do cut down to 220. Right now at 225, that's actually a perfect walking around weight. It may be a little surprising, but I could make weight at 205 tomorrow. I got very good at cutting weight. Very good at having control.
I've heard other wrestlers talk about that before.
Yeah.
Explain how you could go from 225 to 205 overnight.
There's a process. Usually I plan ahead, but I can, one of my recent weight cuts was 21 pounds in about 24 hours. There's something called water loading. You're able to kind of fill your body up with fluid. Keep drinking water. You flush out everything else. You're holding onto the water. You're not digesting any salts. And then you go through and just dehydrate yourself. And since your body's made up of a large majority of water, you're able to kind of wring your body out of that water. And if you know how your body reacts to certain things, I didn't skip a meal for my last weight cut. So that's something that, that says that, I could cut more weight if I wanted to. Right now, 20 pounds is surprisingly somewhat comfortable. A little bit over that, or if I try doing it without, while having a lot of salt, my body might be a little painful, but you definitely get good at it. It never feels better, but you definitely get better at it.
Now, how long do you plan on coaching, at the high school level? You also coach, other wrestlers, whether it be at your gym or off season. How long do you plan on coaching?
I plan on being around for a long time. This sport did so much for me, and if I can ever give back, if I can be involved in the sport at any level, I'm going to be. So as long as my schedule allows it, I will be involved, especially with Stoughton High, since that's my roots, that's where I started. I just love it. It's something I'm very passionate about, and just the self-satisfaction it gives you. With competing, I have a lot of self-satisfaction, but I have control over that. It's almost more stressful to have someone you've been coaching, someone you've been teaching, going out there and competing, but you can't do anything about it. I get more nervous for when Frankie wrestles than when I compete or I fight, because at least I have personal control over what happens. And when Frankie goes out there, I can't physically help him. I can coach him. We can work through some positions vocally, but you can't go out there and actually take on that match for him. So it's something that really I'm dead after a day of coaching, because my adrenaline goes up, goes back down, then it shoots right back up, and you have usually 14 wrestlers competing in a tournament, and you're coaching each one of them. You're in the corner for each one of them. So
I saw you at the Canton match, which was towards the end of the season, and you were very active for the junior varsity too. So it's more than just 14 matches. We actually have footage of you. We mic'd you up for that match, and we have some footage of you coaching. So let's show that before we continue the interview.
Get the wrist the other side.
Yep, there you go. It's right there.
Wrist into half. Into half.
That power half right there. Go ahead. Go ahead. Nice job. Keep going. Keep going. Get the leverage up near the elbow. Nice job. Nice job. Now run that. There you go. Pull up on that near arm. Pull up on that arm. Pull it up. Pull it up. Pull it up. Pull it. Nice job. There it is. Break the tie and go. Break the tie and go. Out of the tie up and go. Now set it up. Now you can go. Hey, you can go right there anytime. It's right there. Lift and return. Lift and return. Hey, here you go. Nice job. Good job.
Right over his head. Okay. You know what you did, right? On the change,
Yeah, just you can't do that. Run, 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 run. Up to the side. Drive. Drive over. Go, 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 go. Nice settle. Settle. Nope. Snap and spin. Snap, snap. Let your legs back. Legs back. Go spin. Spin behind. Spin behind. Cross face. Cross face. Nice job.
So we got to take a look at you coaching, and obviously you're a talented fighter as well, and you're going to be taking those talents to a television screen near you with at Fox Sports 1, The Ultimate Fighter. Take me through your career a little bit fighting. We spoke a lot about your background, but from amateur to professional. Just quickly, some of your career highlights, the bouts that you've participated in.
Okay. Well, through specifically MMA, I was a 2-time title holder for Kickdown MMA. That's a large promotion in Denver, Colorado. I was blessed with the ability to go out there and be able to compete and win an amateur title out there. Those are kind of my highlights of my amateur career. I had plenty of local fights and definitely got some good experience.
You started at Foxwoods, right?
That was my first professional fight. Was at Foxwoods, that was WCMMA, World Cup MMA, and that's something that most professionals don't start, fighting at the casinos. They usually, they start off at maybe a CFX or an AFO, maybe fighting at a Holiday Inn or something like that, kind of a smaller venue. I think that with my success in wrestling and my successful amateur career, I think I had the ability to start off at kind of a larger scene and have some professional fights, at a few different casinos, Twin River, Foxwoods, and I was able to compete at a high level right away. Even though I had no professional fights before my first amateur debut, obviously, I was still able to compete at a decent level there because of my prior success.
And tell me a little bit about The Ultimate Fighter. I know that you can't go into how you do on the show, but just tell us a little bit about how this show works.
How the show works is 32 professional fighters are casted for each season. They fight inside, they fight to get into the house. So 32 people are casted, 16 people go home. So obviously these 32 people, put it all online. They're flown to Vegas, they go out to fight, and only 16 actually make it into a house and complete a full season, The Ultimate Fighter. So obviously there's a huge incentive for those people to win their first fight. I think that's one of the most stressful things to be put in as a professional athlete is if you don't win this next fight, you go home. So that's kind of the process. Once the 16 fighters once the 16 fighters are chosen or win their fights, there's 2 selected coaches, and each one of those coaches get to pick their team of fighters. So then the 16 people are broken into teams of 8. All 16 people live in the same house, and you can imagine, any kind of drama or specific interactions.
Reality television.
Yeah, that happen when you take 16 alpha males, around the world and put them into one house to live there for an extended period of time. I mean, I know in past seasons there were instances of people peeing on each other's beds and stuff like that, disliking each other, playing a lot of pranks. So there's definitely drama that comes with the show. So
it's more than just having to deal with winning your match and advancing, even though that's the ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. You also have to deal with the personalities and the whole structure of kind of the forced nature of reality television where you're in a bubble and the camera's always on you. What was that experience like? And again, I know that you can't tell us everything, but just to kind of be mic'd up and to have the cameras on you all the time, what was that like?
Well, I can't talk about any kind of results or whether or not I made the house, but yeah, I mean, I can just imagine watching the show. I watched the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, and it seems incredibly invasive. You have a camera on you 24/7. There's just the situation of not having any privacy would just be, I guess, intimidating for a lot of people trying out for a professional show. There's certain personalities can do that. Certain people need their privacy. They need to be away, and they need to, have a place to go where, they're not surrounded by people all the time. And in past experiences with the show, that doesn't happen. You don't have that. You don't have your own schedule. You eat, sleep, and train, and that's it.
And now I know, again, you're very limited in what you can say, but just in general, how is this show the type that it's taped weeks ahead, or is this going to be live each week? How does that work?
Yep, it's not a live show. Mm-hmm. I know a good friend of mine, Jimmy Quinlan, was on season 16 of the show, and I was out with him. I happened to be out with him at one of the promotions, and he was at the fight. He was having a beer, and The Ultimate Fighter was coming up, and he was actually fighting, later that week. And people were going up to him, "Hey, Jimmy, good luck. Good luck with your fight next week." And, you know, he kind of just laughed it off, and it's like, do they really think that I'm going to fly to Vegas and fight while sitting here having a beer, you know? So it's kind of funny looking at that situation and just knowing things are pre-filmed, and the people that are casted, you know, sign a large non-disclosure agreement saying that they won't talk about results, you know, and they won't kind of really give any information on the show. So it was just a really cool experience to follow Jimmy around, someone that was casted. He was local. I actually wrestled with him, and you know, seeing people go up to him, telling him good luck when he knows exactly what happened and what happened to his fight. So that's definitely something that's really interesting.
Now I know you know things. How hard is it not to tell people when they ask you? And, you know, when you're on a show like this, how hard is it not just to kind of say exactly what you know?
I don't think it's that hard, just for the fact that I have such a I have a level of respect for the whole production and everything that goes into this show. You know, I don't mind it. I think it's going to be great for people that are close for me, my family, you know, my brother, you know, the rest of my family, my father. I think it's kind of cool to still be suspenseful and be able to watch the season and see everything unfold without having any hints. You know, if someone tells you the plot of a movie or what happens, who wants to watch the movie?
Now, you have a lot going for you between the appearance on this television show, your business, your coaching, your fighting. What keeps you driven, you know, as we approach the end of the interview? What just kind of keeps you driven? What keeps you motivated to keep doing this, to have the crazy hours, to kind of put everything into it? What keeps you driven?
It's just there's some aspects, the competitiveness. I love to win and I hate to lose. And that in itself is very motivating to keep training and to fight and to compete. But I think it's just the fact that you have one life, and I have this underlying fear that what if I don't make the most out of this life that's been given to me? What if I'm not successful? And that terrifies me. So the motivation every morning to wake up, and it's like, you have one life. I need to go do this. I need to be successful. I want to be successful, and I think that's the true way to be successful, is to really want it. You know, if you're just content and if you're not looking for the next step, I don't think I'll ever really be satisfied with my life, because every time I get something, I always want something more. So,
well, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Where's the ultimate goal or the pinnacle?
Well, business-wise, I want to have several gyms. I want to be, you know, successful with my fighting career. I want to, you know, in 10 years, I think I plan to be done fighting. I plan on having a whole team of successful fighters, and again, like coaching, you know, go through the whole experience, be successful, and then give back. You know, be able to run a gym and have a team of fighters and teach them about the sport and kind of guide them that same experience that impacted my life, that, you know, really gave me so much positive experiences, and kind of go with them, you know, get that same self-satisfaction as when I go out and I see someone like Frankie win a state championship. I want to bring other professional fighters kind of through their careers, and maybe they'll be successful, maybe they won't, but I think it's about the path they take, you know, the lessons you learn from just athletics in general. So that's where I see myself in 10 years, and again, hopefully I'll have, you know, an established family and, you know, a wife and some kids. I think that's the big pinnacle. I could talk about all my business aspirations, but I think that something that will really be satisfactory and meaningful will be a family someday, and hopefully be able to take care of the rest of my family, you know, my extended family. And my parents have helped me out a million times over, and I don't think I could ever repay them, but, you know, maybe if I'm successful, maybe I could do something small for them. So those are some of my goals and where I see myself in 10 years.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and we look forward to watching the show and following your progress in not just the show, but also business, coaching, and fighting. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad to be on here.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jeffrey Pickette. See you next time on Stoughton Spotlight.